license. NCJ 891. It's a black Monte Carlo. 2 males in it. NCJ 891. And let's try and yank that guy. Let's get up here and let's stop him if we have to.
Hello, America. Welcome to Your Leo Nation, where we believe in and support the rule of law. It's a unique situation today, and just so excited about this. Very, very excited. I am the happily retired Chief Mark Garrett. And, you know, there are 2 days that I consider pivotal in law enforcement in the United States. And one of those that we've talked about before on the show is the Newhall CHP incident in 1970. But there was a second incident that had as much effect on the men and women of law enforcement in this country, I think, as the CHP incident did, and in some ways, maybe even more. And that incident was the Miami FBI Shootout, April 11th, 1986. Some of you are familiar with that. Some maybe not, but you're going to find out about it today intimately. One of the reasons I'm so excited, of course, is to have our guest on today, Ed Mireles. Ed, thank you so much for being on Your Leo Nation.
Well, thank you for asking me, Mark. You know, I can't go any place where I'm not invited. You know, so.
Well, I tell you what, you're definitely invited here. And Ed is retired FBI special agent and the man responsible for ending the lives of 2 of the most vicious murderers and criminals, I think, in American history. Although, ironically, we'll talk about this, they didn't have as much as a traffic ticket before April 11th, which is really important for all law enforcement personnel to realize that things can come out of nowhere. But Ed, you were an integral part of this incident and really made law enforcement history that day. The second reason I'm so excited about today's show is because I really have the unique opportunity to be surrounded by incredible professionals of the Walton County Sheriff's Office, Florida department. And it's we have people represented by Captain Falk of the training division here, Lieutenant Collette of the SWAT team, and probably 25 or 30 men and women of those specialized units. And they are here really like I am to learn from someone who's lived something that none of us want to go through. I made 30 years with CHP of not having to do something like this, and I hope these men and women never have to. But it's because of people like you that we can learn from these lessons, Ed. And so, you know, as we get into the story and as we get into the podcast, I'm really looking forward to interaction between you and the men and women of Walton County Sheriff's Office here in the free state of Florida that I'm happy I escaped to from the not so free state of California. So, and by the way, I know you're in Florida too, Ed. You're in the southern part, which is, I guess it's still kind of part of the state. Is that right? I think so. So,
Yeah.
So Ed, you know, let's just go and get started. And just real quick, briefly, give us a little background about yourself and kind of how you got into the FBI. Just kind of set the stage.
Okay. Real quick, you know, I'm a product of the 1950s. I was born in the early 50s, you know, nuclear family, mother, father. I had a brother, 2 sisters, South Texas. We had a structured family life. You know, I had, you know, family, church, school. Back then, I didn't know what it was called, but it was called, you know, civic duty, rule of law. My family was very much into, hey, obey the law. be good, and so on and so forth. Kind of like the, the golden rule or the 10 Commandments, whatever you want to call it. And that was instilled in me by my family, especially my grandparents. And then from there, I mean, it just evolved. I mean, I don't see it as so much an unusual upbringing, as I thought it was perfectly normal, or it was normal back then. Unfortunately, during that time frame, the Vietnam War started in the 60s, and I had cousins and uncles who were older than me, not by much, but older, and they went off to serve in Vietnam, and they came back, and they were pretty, the PTSD. Nobody really knew what PTSD was back then, so they came back, kind of screwed up, so that kind of affected me, and as I was growing up, I hit 18. And my senior year in high school, I got a draft notice. So I'm thinking, hey, look at this, kind of like um, that movie, shoot, the jerk. I'm in the phone book. I'm in the phone book. I got a letter from my Uncle Sam. It said, "Greetings to all who shall see these presents. Mr. Edmundo Mireles Jr. is hereby offered a 4-year all expense paid vacation, in the military." You know? So I ended up joining the Marine Corps, and went from there. I never got transferred or served in Vietnam, because they called the war off by the time I went through my training. So I had to finish out my Marine Corps, the remaining 3 years of my Marine Corps obligation. So went to college after that, and I was so lucky. I met an FBI agent during my college years who took a liking to me. I mean, we got to be friends. I mean, I guess I was like his little kid brother or something. I'm not sure. And in my junior year, he approached me and said, "Hey, you're getting pretty close to graduating, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Have you ever considered or no?" He said, "Hey, what are you going to do after you graduate?" And I said, "Well, I was thinking about joining the police department, probably back in Texas." And he said, "Well, have you ever thought about joining the FBI?" And I said, "Not really. I thought you had to be smart." Not quite in those terms, but he said, "No, we hire people from vast different backgrounds: lawyers, accountants, engineers, scientists, linguists, former police officers, former military guys and gals, stuff like that." So he said, "Hey," he said, "I've been watching you, and I think you'd be a great candidate." So he said, "I'm going to get you an application, and when you get it, make copies and rough draft the answers." And he said, "And when you're ready, use me as a reference." And I said, "Wow, that's fantastic." So like 18 months later, I mean, after I graduated from college, from the university, about 18 months after that, I was at the FBI Academy in training. And you know what? Cops. I know cops. Okay, we all think we're shit hot. You know, you know. I thought I was shit hot when I was like 25. I got to the FBI Academy, and I looked around and I'm thinking, holy moly, man! I don't know if I can compete with these people. I mean, talk about the high caliber of candidates. Like I said, I thought I was like a number one. And I got there, I was like maybe a B, a B plus, because I mean, there's some outstanding people that go through the academy. And I'm sure it's the same thing with the police academies. You think you're pretty hot stuff, and then you show up at the academy and you go, whoa, I really have to compete here. So, but luckily for me, my roommate was a lawyer. So he helped me get through the legal classes, because that's like 33 to 40% of the written classes at Quantico are legal class, almost like, I mean, not quite like law school, but up there, on that same level. So I graduated, got assigned to the Washington field office for about 18 months, and then I took an undercover operation to Miami, Florida, 18 months, and then went back to Washington. Got married to a young lady in Miami, and got transferred to Miami in 1985, and I was assigned to the bank robbery squad in 1985. That's how I ended up in Miami.
Yeah. And by the way, I had the same feeling. Like when I got the Highway Patrol Academy, I thought, "Oh, I'm going to get fired in a week," compared to everybody else. But somehow I squeaked through. So I feel that. So you end up in Miami, and uh, really not too long after that, it brings us to this incident we're going to talk about. Before we get to the day, um, why don't you fill us in a little bit about the two? I'll just use the word people, which is probably a stretch. I don't think they were human, but these two guys. Just tell us what was going on. In other words, there were a series of robberies, bank robberies, and other robberies, and things like this, and then how you start putting the dots together.
Right. Well, you know what though, Mark? I mean that's the enigma. I mean that's the strange part. Um, we didn't know anything about these guys. I mean, nothing. They had no arrest record. I mean, we found out post shooting, they had no arrest record. They had no criminal records. They didn't even have a speeding ticket. And talk about hiding in plain sight. I mean, I mean, these guys put out a front. They were, respectable family men. I mean, who knows what goes on behind closed doors, obviously, but um, they presented a front that they had a job, even though that job. I mean, and this is not degrading in any fashion. They had a lawn service. Okay, and in Florida, where the weeds and grass growth, 365 days out of the year, you need a lawn service. So these guys had a front. They had a lawn service company, but until we actually found them, we had no clue who these guys were. Post shooting, we found out that they had prior military service. They were, and anybody in the audience who knows, who's been in the service, there are some units out there that, I mean, there are some tough units in the U.S. military. 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, Navy SEALs, obviously Delta Force, Marine Recon. I mean, all kinds of different people out there. And these guys were part of the 101st Airborne. Back in the 80s. Again, they didn't serve in Vietnam, but they were in that, basically my generation. They were at the end of Vietnam, and then before the other Desert Storm stuff started. So the, despite that, they did have the training. They spent, I think one of them spent 6 years in the 101st, the other one spent 4, and 2 years in the Marine Corps. So a total of 6 years of military service apiece. And like I said, in August, September of 1985, we had no clue who these guys were. All of a sudden, again, I was on the bank robbery squad, and we had at the time 2 gangs operating in South Miami. I mean, in the South Florida area. We had, again, no disrespect to anybody. We had the Hispanic gang and the black gang, because that's all we knew about them. The witnesses said, "Hey, a bunch of Hispanic guys came in here and pointed guns at us and robbed us." Okay. Oh yeah, a bunch of black guys came in here, pointed guns at us and robbed us. So we had 2 active bank robbery and armored truck gangs operating in Miami at the time. Now, that's not to say that that was the only crime going on. I mean, there were lone wolf bank robberies here, attempted armored truck robberies by some amateurs, and so on and so forth. At the time in Miami, there was a bank robbery between, you know, uh, Homestead and Fort Lauderdale. We had a bank robbery every day. I mean, somewhere, or an armored truck robbery. So what? How these guys came to our attention was, the Hispanic gang had a modus operandi, and then the black gang had a modus operandi. So we more or less could tell who was who. But all of a sudden, um, in August, September of 1985, we get a bank robbery call to a stake and nail down in the Kendall area in Miami. And I responded to that robbery, and I got there, and I'm thinking, what the heck's going on here? Um, armored truck had pulled up in front of a steak and ale restaurant. Courier gets out, goes inside, gets a little money bag, about the little plastic bags you see, not the big honking orange bags that you'll see sometimes. So he comes out with the little money bag, and 2 unknown males attacked him from the rear and knocked him on the head, knocked him down, took the bag, took his gun, and then they. And I'm sorry for being an evil man, but I have to laugh at this. So they grabbed the guard, the courier, poor schmuck. He's just trying to make a living. They put an arm around his neck like this, and one of them, the guy with the revolver, stuck the revolver in his ear, and said, and marched him up to the driver's side door of the armored truck. And they tell the courier, tell your partner to open the door. Okay. And guess what their policy is for situations like that? You can imagine the worst. They're not to open the door. As a matter of fact, the driver put the truck in gear and drove away. Can you imagine being the guy stuck there with a gun in your ear? He said by the way, I laugh because I interviewed him, so I, I'm sorry, I'm an evil man, but I still laugh. I put myself in his position, I would have done the same thing. I would, please don't kill me. He's stupid. He should have opened the door. So luckily he wasn't killed. They hit him on the head again, and then he fell to the ground. His partner, the bad guy partner, decided, hey, I don't like this driver. He disrespected us or something. He has an assault rifle, and he opens up with, I don't know, 12 to 15 rounds of rifle fire at the back of the armored truck, and of course, what do rifle rounds do to an armored truck? Nothing, It's like shooting rounds at an MRAP, Nothing happens, So we got to the scene. I interviewed the victim courier, and we did the crime scene, and we found there were 223 caliber shell casings. There's about 14 of them on the ground, But here's the peculiar part: as they're speeding out of the parking lot, the Steak and Ale parking lot, it must have been the passenger, popped 2 smoke grenades and threw them out the back of the car. So as they're escaping, that would lead you to think, hey, these guys are Vietnam vets, because they're popping smoke. The old saying, from the Vietnam War, hey, pop smoke, So, we said, what the hell is going on here? These guys are popping smoke in the parking lot to cover their escape, But it was kind of weird, So we said, hey, it looks like we have some new players in town, And that was the very first robbery. I mean, that just a strange event from the get go. And we did our thing. We obviously, I mean, if your audience knows the bureau, I mean, I'm in my office in central Miami. Steak and Ale was in South Miami. It took me just driving, not code 3 but code 2, driving through traffic. It took me like 40 minutes to get to the crime scene. So we got there about an hour after the robbery. So we did our investigation and stuff like that. So that was the beginning. And then the following week, there was another robbery at a Winn-Dixie restaurant at 104th and US 1. Again, very amateurish. Armored truck pulls up to this Winn-Dixie. The courier gets out. He has a shotgun with him. So there's 2 guys come out of the truck, the driver's in the truck. As soon as the courier and the shotgun, the escort comes out of the Steak and of the Winn-Dixie, witnesses said somebody yelled "freeze," and as soon as they said "freeze," somebody opened up with gunfire. It turns out that somebody shot the courier, the money courier, in the legs with a 12 gauge shotgun. They were using number 6 bird shot. Hit him in the legs, knocked him down. And what happened after that is the guard that went on the ground had the presence of mind to draw his revolver and start returning fire in some direction. The shotgun guy, luckily he didn't use the shotgun, he used his revolver. And then even the truck driver got involved in responding to the shooting. So 3 guards, 6 rounds each, 18 rounds were fired by the guards. In return, we suspect that the bad guys, the robbers, fired anywhere from 12 to 18 rounds themselves. So in the middle of this shopping center at 12 noon, there were anywhere between, 25 to 35 rounds fired in an area, that's maybe like 50 by 50 feet in front of this Winn-Dixie. Amazingly, only the courier was shot, in the legs, the initial rounds, But the interesting part is like, holy cow, these guys are two weeks in a row, 2, shootouts. I mean, 2 gunfire. And we had a lot of witnesses for that one. We started interviewing people. Hey, what kind of can you describe the suspects? Um, Witness statements were, hey, they're white guys, they're Hispanic guys, they're black guys. Okay, there was two of them, there was four of them, there was three of them. They were in a green car, they were in a yellow car, a gold car, a brown car. It was a two-door car, four-door car. Some people said it was a station wagon. So I mean, typical, fight or flight response for people who aren't trained, and they go, "Oh my God!" They think they see something, but it really wasn't what they thought it was. So we started, regrouping in the office, saying, "Hey, man, we got some new players in town, and everything that they had done up to that point was violence. I mean, boom, shots fired, shots fired. The following week, um, there was another call for an armored truck robbery again in the Kendall area of Miami. This was pretty interesting. The only shots that were fired by the courier. The armored truck pulls up into to a restaurant, couldn't find a parking space in front of the restaurant, so he had to go around the corner and park in an alley. The courier jumped out, went to the restaurant, comes back out, and he's walking towards the truck that's parked in an alley. According to the courier, he said he came around the corner, he saw a dipsy dumped a trash dumpster in the alley, and he looked around to the back of the dumpster, and he said he saw two individuals standing back there that were wearing ski masks, gloves, dark clothing, like almost like a military uniform, like fatigues. By the way, I'm sorry. Let me go back to the first and second robberies. All the witnesses said they were masked, gloves, military style, dress. So he said he saw these guys standing behind the dumpster, and I love this. I wish we could do it in law enforcement. He decided on his own to make a preemptive hit. he, I love it. He saw a threat. He drew his revolver, came up and fired 4 shots in the direction of these guys. Of course, they fled the scene. So, I mean, nobody was hit. Obviously, the driver of the courier of the armored truck driver didn't even know his partner had fired shots. I mean, that's how, I guess, insulated or inattentive the driver was. So we respond. And again, I'm sorry for being such an evil, nasty man, but I asked the driver, I said, "Hey, you look familiar." And he said, "Well, what happened here?" So he said, "Hey, just what I told you." He comes out of the restaurant, goes around the corner, sees 2 guys dressed in black, makes a preemptive hit, pow, 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 And I said, "You look real familiar. Who are you?" He says, "Yeah, he said, 2 weeks ago I was robbed at the Steak and Ale." I'm like, "Oh, you're the courier that had the gun in his ear." So that put it together for me. I mean, this guy had learned a lesson. Okay, what's that old saying? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame. No, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So he said, "Man, I saw these guys, man."
Case of lessons learned. I mean, right away. Yeah.
Really, So he opened up on these guys, So anyway, it was basically that. I mean, we chalked it up as an attempted robbery, even though there was no real attempt, I guess. So we just go on from there. So we're trying to figure out who these guys are. Interesting part is we didn't even know whether these guys were black or white, because they were just so well covered up. They had mask on, the ski masks, eye holes and mouth holes and stuff like that. No, and gloves. Nobody even knew who they were. So we had 2 more incidents. There was 2 incidents happening one day in October. There was a drive-in teller that was going from the main building to the teller island. She was accosted with the guard from behind, hit on the head. They told her to open the island. She got nervous, and she's trying to put the key in the lock, and she snaps the key off. So it did not make the robbers happy. Okay, so she turned around and says, "Please don't kill me. It was a mistake." So luckily they didn't hurt either the guard or the lady. So they took her money bag. They got $10,000. 90 minutes later at 12 noon, they hit another bank on US 1. And this time they went in like, gangbusters. They went in like like that movie Heat. You know, they went into the bank. It was noon. There was a 30 or 40 customers and employees in the bank. They go in, one of the two fires a shotgun round into the ceiling. Boom! Everybody on the floor. It was like typical Hollywood stuff. So they went in there. They accosted everybody. With the assault rifle. One of the guys jumps the teller counter, grabs the manager. Who's the manager? And of course, being good employees, all the employees said, "It's her." It's like, who's the lieutenant? That's him over there. Just don't hurt me. So I'm sorry, I'm an evil man. I'm sorry, I can't help but laugh at
Listen, we're all cops or ex-cops. We all have the same mentality. So have at it. By the way, Ed, let me chime in here real quick. These guys really went from zero, so to speak, to putting their foot on the gas pedal, because it's clear, and I'm going to talk about the book here in a little bit, but they really seem to accelerate their activity. In other words, it just kept climbing faster and faster.
You know what, Mark? I don't think they accelerated, man. I think that from the first get-go, they were already going at 100 miles. I mean, you fire 14 rounds at the back of an armored truck. That's day one, okay? It's like, man, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and you'll see what I mean, because they went from just shooting rounds and to actually shooting and killing people, so that kind of that's a level that's beyond, the pale, I guess they say. But the second robbery, the one in the bank, they got a big score on that one. They got something like $54,000, from the bank, so uh, in 1985, yeah, that's like maybe 500,000 today, or 250,000, But I mean, we showed up. We had like 30, 40 witnesses. It's, again, they were white, they were black, they were tall, they were short. There were two of them in the bank. There was one outside. And the the getaway car, again, somebody got a pretty good look at it. They said, hey, it was kind of like a gold color or an orange colored car. We couldn't tell what it was, two-door, but that's about all we got. We didn't get any tag or anything like that. So again, we're trying to figure out what the heck's going on. I mean, it started in August and this is October now. So the next robbery, because they got $54,000, they started laying low. We didn't have any robberies for a couple of months. Wasn't until January, I believe it was, that we had another robbery. And again, they didn't hit the bank. They hit an armored truck in front of the bank. So again, vicious bastards that these guys were. The courier is coming out of the truck. He's got a couple of bags with him, and didn't even give him a warning. He's got his back to the parking lot, and he's pulling bags out of the truck like this, just without cause. Somebody shoots him in the legs with a shotgun. Again, number 6 pellets, knocks him down, and then the second individual walked up behind him, or walked up on him with an assault rifle and fired 2 rounds into his back. I mean, that's totally unnecessary. But it is life. Life is life. So they grabbed the money bags and they took off. So again, they got about $48,000, I believe, during that robbery. Again, we respond. This is a violent, a violent act. So we're trying to figure out who, what, where, when. Luckily for us, at that point, a witness had been in the area, said, man, I just saw this shooting, so he saw them get into their car, drive their car to a Burger King in the area, park. He actually witnessed them getting their stuff out of the robbery car and putting it into a white pickup truck. And they took their masks off, and that's the first time we realized that we found out that they were white guys. Okay, so the witness tried to follow them in the pickup truck, but they noticed that somebody was following them, and they pulled into a neighborhood area. There's very little traffic, and then they stopped the pickup truck, and the car kind of like stupidly came right up on him. The passenger gets out with an assault rifle and comes out like this and points it at the, at the driver in the car behind him, and he nods at him like this, and the driver put the car in reverse and backed away. Okay, for everything he did, he never got the tag on the car, on the pickup truck. Okay, so you know, led the police back to the Burger King. We processed the car. That's when we found out that the car belonged to the Brielle family, and the Brielle family's son Emilio had disappeared the previous year in August. He'd gone out to the Everglades to do some plinking, some target practice out there. Disappeared, never came home. Um, so that's the first time we actually had a solid, relatively solid lead. A white pickup truck, white guys. That's all we had. So we had they had a big hit, big score. Again, we had their stolen car. So we figured, hey, you know what though? They're probably going to have to get another getaway car, a bank robbery car. As luck would have it, on March, God, I forget the date, March 9th of 1986, a Jose Collazo was out target practicing in the Everglades, where almost at the exact same spot that Brielle had been practicing. He saw a white pickup truck with two guys pull up, into the area where he was shooting, and he acknowledged them. Hey, listen, I'm shooting this way, and they said, oh yeah, we're going to shoot that way, that too. So he ignores them. He's, keeps shooting. And then he said about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, he said he kind of sensed something behind him, and he turns around and there's the two white guys there pointing weapons at him. One had an assault rifle, one had a revolver. So they told him and said, hey, listen, stay cool. All we want is your car, your guns, your wallet, and everything will be fine. So he's, what are you going to do? You got two guys at angles. One's got an assault rifle, one's got a gun. You comply. Hey, listen, man, take my gun, take my watch. You want my shoes? Whatever. Just take it and get the hell away. So I ended up speaking with Mr. Collazo, later. He survived, but he said when the guy with the revolver told him, turn around and walk towards that lake, he said he had a very bad feeling. He said, oh shit. It's one of those oh shit moments, where he said, man, he said, hey, they weren't asking me to take a swim, hey, let's go skinny dipping in this little lake here. He said he knew at that point that they were going to kill him. So he starts walking around. He wasn't walking too fast. He was dragging his feet. The individual with the revolver starts poking him in the back like this, And, I have to give Mr. Collazo a lot of credit, and it's a huge learning point for police officers. Mr. Collazo was a salesman. He had no training. I mean, he wasn't even a workout fanatic. He was just a person, just a regular old person. Um, and he must have seen this in some Bruce Lee kung fu movie or something like that, because when the individual with the revolver is sticking the revolver in his back, he decides to, was law enforcement officer, you do the sweeping motion with your arm, you sweep behind you and you get the weapon off your center. So he swept his arm like that, and he starts fighting with this individual over the revolver. Okay. And when they're fighting, the revolver goes off a few times. And at some point in time in this fight, Mr. Collazo shot through the left hand, and then somehow or other he shot through the shoulder or somewhere up in this area. And the last hit, God, I don't have a pencil with me. Sorry about that, guys. The last hit Mr. Collazo in the face. He got shot in the face. Okay, if you see where this marker is, if that round goes into my face at this angle, it's not a good thing. That round's going to go through and it's hit the back of my head, the brain stem, or other important parts back here. So, but I tell people, I said, hey, what? Sometimes time and chance play a factor. The Bible says, Ecclesiastes 9:11, again, I saw that under the sun, the race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but time and chance happen to them all. And this is a classic example of time and chance. If you look at the angle of this marker here, if I'm shot in this fashion here, that round's going back and hit some important pieces back here. Mr. Collazo was shot at an angle like this. Okay, makes a huge difference. Okay, because that round traveled through his upper jaw and came out below his right ear. Okay, so, and I recommend that you not go home and try that at home. Okay, because it's not. I mean, it's not going to end well. But if you're going to get shot in the face, that is probably the best way to get shot. Okay, I mean, it just went through. I mean, it destroyed his upper jaw and teeth. If you think about it, what do you have up here? Nothing but open, nasal passages and cavities and stuff like that. So there's really, hollow in here. And the only part that was pretty risky was the back of the ear where the, carotid artery would go. Very lucky, very, very lucky man. So he goes down. I mean, obviously, I talked to a doctor about that. He said, hey, you get shot like that and, you're going to go unconscious for a few seconds, if not longer. Okay, so Collazo probably passes out. The shooter probably thought, hey, this is a killing hit because I shot him in the face. So they left him there without putting more rounds into his body. So when Collazo wakes up, he looks around. His car is gone. His weapons are gone. His wallet, everything is gone. The white pickup truck is gone. So for the benefit of your audience, this is a story of survival. This whole thing is a story of survival, perseverance, training, and tactics, and everything else. But the biggest message I want to leave with you guys is perseverance, survival, the will to survive. Again, Mr. Collazo was a salesman. He is not a highly trained professional like you guys in the audience. Okay, you guys are trained professionals. He had a decision to make. Okay, he said, do I stay here and hope someone comes to find me, or do I try to help myself? Because he had a strong will to survive. He wanted to live. So he said, man, I'm a mile from the highway in this field in the Everglades. The only thing that's going to find me is alligators. So he said, man, I've got to try to do something to help myself. Even if he died trying, at least he tried. Okay, so he said he started crawling, on the dirt path to get to the highway, and he was try to stand up and stagger and so on. And so he said he doesn't even know how long it took him to go a mile, but eventually he gets to the Tamiami Trail, Calle Ocho, all the way out there in West Miami, and he gets to the highway and he starts waving people down, South Florida being what it is, you don't always pick up muddy, bloody, dirty people on the side of the highway. He's lucky somebody stopped. So eventually someone stopped, said, what the hell's wrong with you? He said, I've been shot, I need help. So they put him in the car and they took him, they went back the opposite way, that they were traveling to a Circle K restaurant at Chrome Avenue and the Tamiami Trail. And they called 911. An ambulance went out there, picked him up, took him to Jackson Memorial, I guess, and he survived. So that was our first live witness. And Ben Grogan, who was had a desk next to my desk in the squad area, saw that had been a shooting in the Everglades, and he pounded the desk. He goes, boom. He said, guys, here's our next robbery car. I guarantee you. I said, what are you talking about, Ben? He said, this kid, Collazo, got shot and wounded, and he had his car stolen in the same spot where the Brielle kid was. So we said, oh, okay. And so he got a couple other agents to go with him to the hospital to interview Collazo, and we found out everything he knew about these guys. That was the first solid lead that we had. We had a good description of these guys. It was such a good description that he gave the police sketch artist a good composite description of these guys. So we had a description of his Monte Carlo and the tag. Okay, that happened like on March 12th, I believe. Within a week after he was shot and wounded, in the Everglades. There was a bank robbery at 136th Street and US 1. And it just so happened that an off-duty U.S. Customs inspector was going to the Barnett Bank to cash a check that morning. And he said he's looking for a parking space, and he looked at the entrance of the bank, and he says, hey, he saw two guys running out at Port Arms with long weapons. He goes, maybe I should wait to cash my check, So he said he hunkered down behind the dashboard. He's looking, and as luck would have it, they jumped into a black car and they pulled out. And when they pulled out, they had the rear tag aimed right at the customs officer's position. So cops being cops, he took the tag down, copied it down. A lot of inexperienced people look at other things. They don't look for a tag number or stuff like that. So we had a verified sighting of the tag from Mr. Collazo's car, and that tag number was NTJ 891, Florida tag. So we linked the shooters with the robbery and the stolen car and Brielle. It kind of all started to make sense, after a little bit of putting the dots together. So that was in March. They got away with about $8,000. So I'm sure you guys have heard intuitive policing, or you see a lot of movies. This ridiculous. You get these psychic detectives, on TV, or people that can, read minds or predict. No, I mean, that's all bullshit. We all know that. But I do believe in intuition. I believe in experience. Looking at evidence. Okay, and back to experience. Okay, an experienced copper, can look at something and say, hey, listen, this happened like 8 times in my career. I know more or less what's going on here. Or, you do something for 20 years, you do it over and over and over. It's like you're experienced, you become intuitive. When someone is bullshitting you and say, hey, listen, I wasn't driving drunk, or, I wasn't texting and driving, that type of stuff, Anyway, intuitive policing. Our supervisor, Gordon McNeil, was at firearms training on April 10 with Ben Grogan, the case agent for these series of robberies. Okay, and he told Ben, he said, "Hey Ben, how about we set up a surveillance tomorrow?" He said, "Gordon, he said, I'll take all the help I can get, but what do you know? What do you got?" He said, "Okay, number one, these bad guys hit 3 weeks ago. When they hit, they only got $8,000. He said, tomorrow's Friday. The majority of the robberies are on Fridays. And for the benefit of your audience, I don't know how old you guys are, but in the old days, we used to call that.
Ed, they're a lot younger than us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So just FYI.
We used to call that Payday Friday, because we didn't have debit cards or ATMs. And if you wanted money, you had this thing called checks. You had to actually write on them and stuff like that. You had to go to the bank and say, "Sir, please, can I have my money?" So that's why they called it Payday Friday. And banks would always, boost up their cash reserves for Payday Fridays. So Gordon said, "Hey, the last time they hit was 3 weeks ago. They only got $8,000, and tomorrow's Payday Friday." He said, "I think they're due." Okay, he said, "Just a hunch." So Ben Grogan said, "Gordon, we'll go with it." So they agreed, and we set up a surveillance for the next day, Friday, April 11th. So on the 11th, we had 11 agents from my squad, the bank robbery squad, and 3 agents from Homestead. We met down in South Miami at a Home Depot, I believe it was. And we got all the information that we had at that point in time. We had a white pickup truck, no tag, 2 white males, about 6 feet, 6'1", stuff like that. Military bearing, fit, not muscular, bulgy muscular, but fit, almost like marathon runners. The description of Mr. Collazo's car, the black Monte Carlo, Florida tag, NTJ 891, and then we split the team up into four locations. We set a team up at locations where the bad guys had hit before. I was at 128th Street, 136th Street had been hit twice. 148th Street the bank there had been hit once, and then there was a bank at 184th Street in the US 1 had been hit once. So we decided to spread out in a 5 mile area, and we were supposed to have like a combination of static surveillance and roving patrols. Being in the area a mile from a potential robbery is better than being back at the office 40 miles away. Okay. We would be in a position to respond immediately if something happened. So we set up the surveillance. We notified Metro Dade PD that we were in the area. And by the way, let me take a step back. We had asked Metro Dade the day before if they wanted to join us, because these types of investigations, you got to work hand in glove with the local or the county police departments. I mean, I'm a federal agent. I can't be in all places at all times. And you guys, the patrol officers, are on duty. You're patrolling. I mean, that's what you guys do. You patrol, you look, you observe. I sleep well at night knowing that mean men and women like you guys are on patrol. So I think I forget who said that. Anyway, so Metro said, "Hey, listen, guys, thanks for asking, but we have another assignment." We were working from 8 to 4, and they were working from 4 to midnight. So they said, "Hey, we have another assignment, so we can't go out there." So okay, so we did our thing, and around, oh God, 8, not 8, 9:30, 25, somewhere in that. I forget the time. Ben Grogan calls on the radio. He said, "Attention, all units. We're behind a black vehicle, two-door, Florida tag NTJ 891." And I'm thinking, holy Jesus, I used another word. I said, I can't believe these guys are in the same freaking car.
Ed, let me interrupt you there. Reading the book and listening to you now, it's interesting that these guys didn't cold plate the car. In other words, they kept the correct tag on the car. It's going to come back stolen and easily identifiable, which is kind of strange to me. It's not unique. It happens. Crooks are always smart, but these guys were bright guys, and it escapes me why they left the actual tags on the car.
That is a good question. And I don't. We've asked that question ourselves, many, many times. It's like, why would they do that? And you know what? We have come down to one answer. Okay, and obviously we can't ask them because they're dead, but we think that it was their arrogance, their in your face, F you, in your face. We're Army Rangers. We're highly trained, and they were heavily armed. Okay, and that mindset, and we'll get into mindset a little later. Okay, their mindset is like, hey, there is nothing that I can't do, and no one that can get in my way. Okay, and we think it was a big fu to law enforcement. Okay, because if they ever got stopped, they were gonna either escape or they were going to go down in a blaze of glory. I mean, it's speculation on my part, but knowing everything I know about these guys, there's, it's a very high likelihood they were like, hey, in your face, basically, So, but again, it amazed me. I'm thinking, hey, this tag has been a bolo in South Florida. It's been on the news. It's been on TV. When they got Collazo out there. And it's like, it's like, holy moly. The publicity on this tag has just been tremendous, but again, they were like, F you, so anyway, so by the time Ben Grogan calls attention all units until Ben Grogan calls felony car stop, let's do it. It was 3 minutes. Okay. So I know guys on patrol, you guys have to always be constantly looking, driving, observing, calling on the radio and stuff like that. But can you formulate a car stop that is going to be high risk? Obviously, the potential for danger is extremely high. In 3 minutes, kind of like formulating plans. Like in the FBI and in the federal agencies, especially in the FBI today, you can't do anything now without having an operations plan. I mean, sometimes it takes 24, 48 hours for an operations plan to get formulated and approved, and then you're told you can do it. In the old days, it's like, you see a problem, you address the problem. We couldn't wait 3 days or 2 days to go catch these guys. And it's an important point that I want to make sure that you guys understand. We had no clue who these guys were. We had no freaking clue. Okay. White guys, two white guys, fit, military bearing. That's all we had. We had no names. We had nothing. Okay. So I can say with absolute certainty that the attitude of the squad at the time was like, hey, we got these guys. They have been phantoms up until this point in time. They were not going to get away. Period. I mean that was telepathically communicated or intuitively communicated amongst each other. They were not going to get away because these guys had shot and killed 4 people, that shot up at least uh, 5 or 6 banks and armored trucks. Okay, there's no way they were getting away that day. Okay, so when Ben called out felony car stop, we did our fancy, we all go to car stop training. It's like, hey, in the academy, we all know that everything is perfect. It's like, and we all know, man, if you work the street, this is all BS. There are 2 types of car stops. People say, well, there's 2 types, high risk, low risk, felony, and not felony. No, guys, there's 2 types: compliant and non-compliant. That's it. Everything else is BS. Okay. You have a compliant car stop. They're all high risk. They're all dangerous. Don't get me wrong. But you've got a compliant stop or a non-compliant stop. And this turned into a non-compliant stop from the get-go. They started trying to speed away to escape bumper cars down 82nd Avenue. I mean, literally like just like a carnival, bumping cars like this. So again, the intuitive communication, the thought process or telepathic decision, these guys were not going to get away. Okay, there was ramming. We were trying to ram them, okay, to a stop. We were trying to ram them up against a wall, a series of walls on the west side of the street. It didn't turn out that way because of non-compliance. They ended up on the east side of the street in front of a house. Okay, it's the luck of the draw. Okay, I would much rather have had them in front of a wall because you got to worry about where your rounds go. Okay, but again, it was what it was. We've received a lot of criticism. Saying, well, you shouldn't have stopped the car in front of a house. Well, no shit, Sherlock. you know, we were trying to put them up against a wall, a cement wall. But again, compliant and non-compliant. So Agent Manauzi rammed them into a civilian car in a driveway up against a tree, and then his car blocked the passenger side, the driver's side door. Okay, so they were boxed in on 3 sides. Their only avenue of escape was to back up, but their car was disabled enough that it probably wouldn't back up, because they were pinned in pretty tight. And agents converged. Most of us were right there when it happened. A couple of agents showed up like 5 or 6 seconds after the shooting started. But again, being the guys in the white hats, you come out with your weapons drawn. FBI, police, put your hands up. You're under arrest. Okay, I mean that was said by Gordon McNeil and Ben Grogan. Okay, that were right there at the almost at the door of the stolen car. FBI, put your hands up. You're under arrest. Okay, and they said no. Kind of like the old Gladiator movie. They say no. They said no by firing their assault rifle at us. They opened up with the Mini 14, the 222 caliber. And I was across the street. I wrecked my car across the street, and I had the shotgun, 12-gauge shotgun. And at 50 yards, a shotgun, you might be able to hit something, 50% of the time, but you're not going to fire a 12 gauge shotgun into an area where you've got 4 FBI agents, 4 police officers in front of you. You're just not going to do it. So I'm thinking, hey, I've got the heavy weapon. I've got double out buck in here, and I cannot shoot with agents in front of me. So I had to move closer. So I decided to run across the street. I went to the left side of the scene, or it would be on the north side of the actual scene, to reinforce Gordon McNeil, who was by himself at that point. So as I'm running across, you hear these supersonic things going by your head. It's exhilarating, as they say. Let's be honest, it scared the shit out of me.
I would say it wouldn't be my choice of word, exhilarating, but
being a former Marine, I worked in the butts and when on the range, when you hear a supersonic round go over your head, what sound it makes, that crack sound, So anyway, so I'm running across the street, man. I'm running for all I'm worth, and I almost got the position where Gordon McNeil was hunkered down. He was behind cover, and then something unusual happened. I didn't know what the hell happened. I'm running forward one second, and the next second I'm looking up at the sky. Literally, I'm thinking, what in the world? I had no clue. So I went through a series of an assessment process, or a regrouping process. And the only reason I was able to do that is because the shootout lasted so long. Most police shootings happen in 5 or 10 seconds. Boom, they happen and they're done. Okay. This thing went on for about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay. So I had enough time to go through this process. It's like, hey, what happened? Where am I? What's going on? It's like an assessment process. I was still in the game, but I had enough time to figure out, if this shootout had been 10 seconds, I would have been out, completely out, because I was totally disoriented. So, but as luck would have it, the thing went on for so long that I was able to stay focused, regroup, as they say, and get focused. And
if I can chime in, I just really want to emphasize that to everybody. And I've never been in an officer-involved shooting. I've been at shooting scenes. I've drawn my weapon. Other people have fired. I didn't, whatever. I didn't have a chance to before it was all over. That's how quick it happens. But for people to really imagine, put yourself in a position where there's a continuous gun battle for 4 or 5 minutes involving long weapons rolling on both sides. It's really, for me, it's unimaginable. I think it's hard for anybody to imagine, but this is what you went through. And 30 seconds would be an eternity, but 4 or 5 minutes with 2 guys who are determined not to die and kill everybody around them is really unimaginable.
Yeah. As far as shootings go, that wasn't an unusual shooting. There's been other shootings, like standoffs, that, barricaded suspects and stuff like that, but this is like active mano a mano. Moving, maneuvering, flanking, counter flanking, all this. It was like, there was a lot of moving parts for 4 or 5 minutes, and just to give the audience, and I wish I was there in person. The area of the actual shooting was, if you can imagine a basketball court from the half court line to the goal. Okay, the shooting happened in an area about the size of a half court, maybe even a little smaller. Okay, so I'd say maybe a 30 by 30 square, 30 to 30 by 30 foot square, thereabouts, give or take. But at the time, I didn't know it. At the time, I'm trying to figure out what the hell happened to me. And again, it went on so long that it allowed me to process. Okay. And then I realized, I'm thinking, oh, geez, what the hell happened? And I've got the shotgun in my right hand, and I'm using my shoulder to try to use my left arm to push myself up, because I see Gordon McNeil still behind the engine block of his car firing. Okay. And it just shows you how the fight or flight response, or the tachypsyche is called. What tachycardia is? Tachycardia is you have a speeding up of your heartbeat. Tachypsyche is a speeding up of your psychic abilities, So the tachypsychia, the fight or flight response had kicked in, and I saw Gordon McNeil, and I don't know how many shots he had fired, but when he was firing his revolver, I saw him, and I'm on my back behind him, and he was firing, and I'm thinking, wow, this is strange, because he went like this, he would go bang, the gun would go up and then come down at about that speed. I mean, that's how slow things got, things were moving. The gun would go up from the recoil and then come down like that. It wasn't like pow, pow, so it was real slow. It was actually kind of cool, So in a morbid sense, Anyway, so I'm looking at Gordon, and I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? And my hearing just was totally gone. Um, then I saw Gordon do something really strange. Okay, Gordon, I'm going to use this as my gun. I saw Gordon do this. His hand goes up like this. He actually turned around, looked at his hand, brought it back down like this, came back on the hood of the car, and continued firing 2 shots. Pow, pow. And I'm trying to figure out, what the hell's Gordon doing? And then it dawned on me, it's like, oh my God, I said, Gordon got shot. And I didn't find out until after, post shooting, that Gordon had taken a .223 caliber round right there between the middle and index finger when he was shooting. He got shot right there. .223 caliber round. Amazing. It just destroyed his hand, and the fact that he came back down and was able to pull the trigger 2 more times is amazing. I mean, if you know anything about physiology and the human body and bones and arteries and stuff like that was pretty amazing. So after he fired his last round, he retreated. He circled around me because he never saw me. He had tunnel vision. He circled around me to get behind cover to reload one-handed, because his right hand is just completely exploded. So that gave me time to kind of like figure out what the hell I was going to do, because I'm thinking, hey, I'm by myself now, so I have to look for threats left and right, up and down. And I got pretty fed up with my arm, and it wasn't working. It wasn't until I made a visual. I had to tear my eyes from the threat points, okay, which is the tops of the cars, the bottoms, of the cars, the front of the hood, stuff like that. I had to actually like practically rip my eyes down to look at my arm to see what the hell was the matter. And it wasn't until that point, it must have been like a minute, minute and a half after I went down, that I realized that I had been shot. Okay, I had no idea. There was no sensation, no pain whatsoever, which is it's a good thing. There are some positive things about fight or flight and the wound ballistics. The human body is a fantastic machine. I took a .223 caliber round right here, and luckily, again, I mentioned time and chance. As I'm running across the street, I see Gordon McNeil, and I said, officer safety, like I had the shotgun pointed at Gordon McNeil's back, and I'm thinking, oh God, I gotta watch that. I brought the muzzle of the weapon up at port arms like this to take it off Gordon's back. When I brought it up, a .223 caliber round hit me right here. Okay, now time and chance. What are the odds? I'm running, I'm bobbing up and down, I'm moving in like this, and for that round to hit me at that exact point instead of hitting me right here. It's pretty interesting, if you think about it. I try not to think about it at night because it makes me cry. If you think too hard, sometimes you go, "Whoa, that round could have gone somewhere else." So anyway, I mean, all kidding aside, though, I mean, this is a 1 in a million shot because it hit me perfectly. It hit me. It hit the ulnar bone, the pinky side bone first, and then it hit the radial bone, the thumb side bone second. Okay, so the round went this way. It shattered my arm. Amazingly, my bones were thick enough that it didn't stop the round per se, but it deflected it sufficiently. And instead of the round continuing to penetrate through, and hit fragments hitting me in the chest and so on and so forth. The round actually hit this way, and then my arm exploded up this way. You know, so when all it's all said and done, I'm having a pretty good day. So you know, because I mean, don't I mean really? All joking aside, it could have been different. could could have been way way different. So. It, it wasn't until that point that I realized I'd been shot. I'm thinking, "Holy Jesus, what the hell is that?" And I couldn't believe it. I actually had to put the shotgun down, take my good hand, my right hand, picked up my left hand like this, and I'm shaking it, and I'm thinking, "Oh, gee, it's attached." And I think, "Oh man, I was shot," and I threw the arm down. Do you know what intrusive thoughts are? And maybe some of you have some psychology backgrounds or experience. Intrusive thoughts. I hope my wife doesn't find out. No, no, that's the wrong intrusive thought. No, that's the wrong one. Or I hope my boyfriend doesn't find out. I'm sorry. I'm an evil man, like I said. Intrusive thought. I threw my arm on the ground and I'm thinking, things to do today. Amputate your arm. Ignore it. Just keep going. You know why I ignored it? There was no pain. I mean, there's nothing I could do about it. There was no sensation of pain whatsoever. So I'm continuing to scan, looking for a threat, and then I see something out of the left side of my towards the left side of my vision, and of course I've got the shotgun and I'm scanning, and I see something off to the left, and I immediately turn to the left, and I'm thinking, what was that, And I'm looking, no threat, and then I'm scanning back, and then I see something again off to the left, and I'm thinking, what the heck, And I'm thinking, it started really bugging me. I'm thinking, what is that? So I said, I'm going to stop, focus forward at my 12, and just see what happens. And then I saw the movement again, and it was something. I saw something that was like flying off to the left like this past my feet, and I'm thinking, uh-oh. So then I put my eyes up like this to the top, and then I focused on it. It was arterial bleeding. And I'm thinking, oh crap, I've been shot in the head, because it was just every time my heart beat, it would like spurt. Okay, so I'm thinking, oh God, I put the shotgun across my chest again, and I took my hand like this, and I put it up on my forehead like that, expecting to feel a big hole up here, a big mushy spot. I didn't feel anything, but I saw blood, so I kept doing this. And unbeknownst to me, I had taken the scrap of skin, and I had folded it over the wound, and it stopped the bleeding. What happened was when I took the hit here, I took a secondary hit here. It just grazed my head like this, and I attribute this right here to be what caused my hearing to be toast right here, the supersonic. So anyway, he barely laid a glove on me. It only hit me right here, and that severed the temporal artery, and that's what caused it to squirt like that. So like I said, when I put my hand up like this, I folded the scalp skin on there, and it just stopped squirting. It was still bleeding, but it wasn't scaring me by squirting. So, so anyway, continue to focus, guys. I'm telling you the story. It's linear. Okay. In the meantime, Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove are fighting. They're putting rounds into the back of the Monte Carlo from their positions. They're putting rounds. I think Ben fired approximately 12 rounds, and Jerry fired he fired 2 magazines. He fired 30 rounds from his magazines in various locations. John Hanlon fired. He had a 5-shot. He fired all 5 shots before he was wounded. So I'm telling you the little slice of the pie here, but everything was going on at the same time. The guys across the street were firing rounds at the suspects too. Gil Arancia fired 12 shots before the gunfight was over. Ron Reisner ended up firing, I think, approximately 21 or 22 shots from his pistol and his revolver. So everything was going on at once. Okay, it wasn't just. I'm just telling you what my perception was in my little tiny little bubble. Okay, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff going on, around the area. That's why I said this gunfight lasted about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. So it allowed me to regroup. Okay, I didn't know what was going on until post shooting. Okay, until they did the post shooting investigation, that I figured out, hey, all of this stuff was happening at the same time. I know what happened in my little slice of the pie. Okay, but it wasn't until afterwards that I found out what was going on in the whole pie, the whole thing. So in the interim, the driver's wounded twice. The passenger who ended up being Platt is wounded like 3 or 4 times, 5 times before he even, almost gets out of the car. And they kept fighting. They kept struggling and fighting and fighting back. So at some point in time, Platt gets out of the car and takes a position outside of the car behind the civilian cars. He continues firing with his assault rifle and a revolver, and then eventually he flanks off to the south, where agents Ben Grogan, Jerry Dove, and John Hanlon were positioned. And we don't know the sequence of events exactly, because the two witnesses are dead. The Agent Grogan and Agent Dove were killed, and John Hanlon was ducked behind the car. He was wounded 2 times, seriously wounded. So we can only piece this, the facts from evidence, crime scene evidence, and a little bit of information from John Hanlon, the only surviving agent back there. But a lot of things are going on at the same time that I'm trying to regroup. So eventually, I got a little bit of my hearing back, and the noise, the shooting went from my 12 to my 1 to my 2 to my 3 o'clock position. And then I figured, well, I don't know what's going. I mean, it's not happening here now. I don't know what's going on to my right, because the cars are in the way. So I decided to crawl on my back to try to crawl around the cars to see what was going on the other side, because I was still conscious. I still had the shotgun. Hadn't fired any shots at that point in time. So I said, hey, maybe I can be of some assistance. Um, Again, no pain. Was I scared? Yeah, I was scared, but I wasn't so much scared of, like, it's hard to describe. I wasn't scared of dying. Um, don't ask me why. I mean, it's like, again, that's a psychological process that happens. The 5 stages of illness. Uh, Anger, denial. I forget what they are now. I should have brushed up on it, but there's 5 of them. Bargaining, um, acceptance. Those 5 stages of grief. Um, but I wasn't afraid of dying. I think, and I don't want you to think, that I'm being presumptuous. I was more afraid of failing than dying. Okay, because I'm thinking, hey, we're in the middle of a serious situation here. I want to make sure that I hold my end up, or hold my side up. So I don't want to be the fault of somebody getting hurt or killed. So I decided to try to crawl my way around the side of the cars and see what's going on the other side. And that's when I saw what had happened. By the time I got around the cars, I saw Agent John Hanlon, Agent Ben Grogan, and Agent Jerry Dove down on the ground. Okay, and I'm thinking, hey, that's all the agents. That's all the agents that were over there. So everybody's down. And then I saw a pair of legs running from the back of Ben Grogan's car towards the front of it. I'm thinking, hey, the agents are down. That's got to be a bad guy. I never saw him. I mean, I just saw his knees down. Okay, and that was a bold assumption on my part. I'm thinking, hey, that's got to be a bad guy, because he's the only guy standing. So I aimed my shotgun at his legs with one arm like this from underneath the car, and I fired 1 round. Uh, that is what the evidence said. Okay, up here, the fight or flight response. I do not recall making that shot. Because I was assessing the shot. Okay, I saw a pair of legs. I saw Jerry Dove on the ground. I saw Ben Grogan on the ground, and I saw John Hanlon on the ground, and I was firing my shotgun, again, a wide dispersal weapon, in the direction of 3 agents. And I'm thinking, don't shoot, don't shoot. And the other half of me was saying, shoot. So I had this like mental breakdown, and the decision I came to was don't shoot. And I didn't shoot, but yet the evidence said, the physical evidence on the scene says I fired, because there's 5 empty shell casings, shotgun casings. And Platt had shotgun pellet hits to his feet. Okay, so obviously the evidence, proves me wrong. I did shoot, and thank God, none of those pellets hit any agents. I mean, because can you imagine being responsible for killing one of your fellow officers? I mean, that would be disastrous. So just to give you a little insight of what the psychology going on back there, don't shoot, towards friendly officers, friendly people, So, and because we're conscientious people, bad guys could give 2 craps about innocent civilians or officers. They'll just, fire, anybody, anytime, So, but anyway, I kept crawling, regrouped, put my back up against the car, and then I peeked around the side of the car, and I saw that the 2 suspects were in Ben Grogan's car. And it became immediately obvious to me that what they were trying to do, they were trying to escape in Ben Grogan's car. They actually got in the car. They could only escape in one direction, and that was if they put Ben Grogan's car in reverse. And if they did that, they would run over Jerry Dove, Ben Grogan, and John Hanlon. And I'm thinking, hey, that's not going to happen. Okay, so I still had the shotgun. I put the shotgun on the lip of the bumper because I couldn't use my left arm, put the shotgun on the lip of the bumper, and I found the sights, and I fired, recoiled on my back, had the shotgun in my right hand, let it slide. The butt hit the ground. I pinched it between my thighs, and then I racked it like this. And I went back to the pistol grip, put it, picked it up again, and I fired 4 shots like that. In the end, from forensics evidence says, I don't think any of those pellets hit the suspects, the 2 bank robbers. It looked good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was putting fire into the compartment of that car to make them duck their heads. Okay, it kind of like kept them from fiddling around with the steering column or keys or whatever. In other words, it prevented them from moving the car. Okay, but at autopsy, there was no shotgun pellet hits to their bodies at all, because they were hunkered down behind the car door, the windshield, the engine block, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of metal between them and me, So, but it prevented them from moving the car, So then I put the shotgun down. I called the agents across the street, and I won't go into a long detailed explanation. I called them. They said stay down, and then I went through a process, By that point in time, I really was starting to get tired. I was looking at the world, and everything was in slow motion, and everything was getting, smaller and smaller. And then I realized, I'm thinking, holy cow, I said, I'm dying, because everything kept, I kept doing this. I'm sitting on my back I'm sitting on my butt with my back to the car, and I started doing this. I actually started like passing out from blood loss. And it scared the crap out of me because I'm thinking, hey man, if I go to sleep, I'm going to die. So they made a movie about that. Humphrey Bogart, The Big Sleep. You guys wouldn't know that. You guys don't even know who Humphrey Bogart is.
I know it. I grew up watching the black and white movies.
Anyway, but it really scared me, falling asleep like that. I mean, I was kind of like, when you're drinking and driving, don't do that. Anyway, so again, going to the 5 stages, of grief, 5 stages of death. You have denial, anger, bargaining, depression. I didn't go through depression, and then the last stage is acceptance. Okay, I went through denial, anger, and bargaining. I actually bargained with God, saying, "Hey, God, can you get me out of this? For old time's sake." He said, "You're not a good bet, Ed." So, I mean, sometimes the answer is no. So no, but I mean, I'm kind of joking about it because it's a highly personal emotion, but I came to a realization, guys, that I really was going to die. I mean, and Ed Mireles, said and accepted, I am going to die, and I accepted that fact. Okay, and I said, okay, I am going to die here today. Okay, and you know what happened? It's a fantastic feeling. What are they going to do to you? I mean, what can anybody do to you? You've accepted death. They're going to put you on the midnight shift. I mean, who cares? You've accepted death, man. I mean, you're at death's doorstep. You know, so that caused an epiphany in me. That caused a change. I was falling asleep. I was dying. Per se. But I said, hey, I'm not afraid anymore. So I said, you know what? I told you about Ecclesiastes 9:11. Again, I saw that under the sun, the race is not ours to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Well, if you look at Ecclesiastes 9:12, it says, if I'm going to die, I'm going to take those two bastards with me. Those. So look it up in the Bible. It does say that. I thought that. Okay, I said, hey, I'm accepting death. Okay, but if I'm going to die, I'm going to make sure those bastards go with me. So I drew my revolver and I stood up. Okay, and I started moving in on the two guys and two bank robbers in Ben Grogan's car. And some people have described it as a shuffle charge, a shuffle. I mean, to me, it was like very slow motion. Okay, it wasn't reckless. It wasn't abandoned. I was still thinking tactics. I stood behind cover, stood behind the trunk of the car, had my weapon up like this. I assessed, and then I moved forward. I took 2 or 3 steps forward, set my position. My strong foot was forward. My left foot was back. Set my position. Weapon up at eye level, rear sight, front sight. Okay, you all know this. I mean, you can only make that tool, that handgun, work one way. You got the front sights and the rear sights. You got to line them up, and then you got to line those up on the target. Okay, the training never left me. Okay, I came up, and I'm dying. Okay, but I still had the training came up to the surface. Okay, front sight, rear sight. Find the target, bang. I took 2 steps forward, set my position, found the sights, bang. 2 steps forward, set my position, sights. I did that 6 times. And eventually I walked forward and I got right to the driver's side door of the Benz car, where I fired the last shot at the driver. And out of those 5 shots, I only missed 1 time. That was from way back there at the beginning. I fired 1 round and at the driver. It went right behind his neck like this. And the second round hit him in the forehead right here. And then the passenger, whom I thought was still alive, I put three rounds into his face, and then the last round I put into the driver's chest, So, and that's a very succinct explanation of the shooting. I mean, I wrote a book about it, and it's more detailed, but we could talk for 4 hours here. But here's the important part, guys.
We're gonna link to your book, by the way, okay, on the website, and I encourage everybody here to take a look and order the book. It's a great read. I didn't want to interrupt, but I didn't want to forget to get this on screen as well.
So okay, super. Thanks, Mark. But listen, guys, it's important. I mean, teamwork. It's important. Okay. Sometimes if you're in a one woman patrol, I mean, you just got to do what you got to do. But I'm sure you have other units around you. Okay, teamwork, perseverance, intuitive policing. Believe me, if you get a feeling about something, you got to go with it. I mean, you may not be able to testify to that in court. Okay, well, Your Honor, I had a sixth sense feeling. I said, what the hell are you talking about, officer? You have to be able to articulate that in court. Your Honor, I based on prior experience, I know that these types of situations, can lead to this. Whatever words you want to use, but you have to be, you have to be always attentive, okay, and never ever give up, and ever, okay. Um, I never gave up, even though when I accepted I was going to die. I mean, that was guys, you have no idea. It's a huge bridge to cross. Okay. I mean, it's like, hey, I accepted the fact that I was going to die, but I still didn't give up. I still got up and I still was fighting to try to survive. That's the important part. Look at Jose Calazo. He's a salesman. He's not a highly trained professional like you guys. Okay. He wanted to survive. He wanted to live, and he did whatever was in his ability, within his power, to try to survive. He crawled, he staggered until he got to a highway to get help. Okay. So you never ever give up. And I've mentioned Ecclesiastes 9:11. Okay. Time and chance. Guys, time and chance is great. You know, I've asked audiences, hey, listen, do you believe in luck? A lot of people say, I don't believe in luck. No, it's like, hey, believe or don't believe. But then I ask, I ask them this question: if you have a choice between being lucky and unlucky, which would you rather be? And they go, well, let me think. Of course, I'd rather be lucky, But guys, all kidding aside, you cannot plan or live your life with luck. Okay. You just can't. You do your job, with training, teamwork, perseverance. Okay, good equipment, good communications, good tactics, all of that stuff that you're taught, in the academy and in post academy training. Okay, but it never hurts to have a little bit of luck on your side. Okay, but with that said, you can't depend on luck. You don't plan an operation on luck. You don't plan your life on luck. Okay, you have to make the right plans, right choices. Okay, and as I said before, you never give up. I mean, even when I accepted death, I was looking at death, and I looked death in the eye, right in the face, and say, hey, you got me. But I still never gave up. Okay, so and going back to the agencies, agencies can give you training, cars, guns, uniforms, etc., but they cannot give you the one thing that you might need down the road, and that is the will to survive. Okay, that has to come from here in your heart, and up here, your training. Okay, the will to survive. You got to think what's important to you. My life's important to me. My family's important to me. My colleagues, my partners are important to me. Okay, but you have to have the will to survive. You have to have the will to want it. You got to keep fighting for it. And you know what, guys? Let's be honest. You can have the strongest will to survive and still die. Okay, but at least you tried to survive. I mean, you don't lay down and go fetal and hope for the best. No, you can't do that. And in Mark, that's pretty much it. I mean, if anybody has any questions, like what my favorite color is blue, by the way. My favorite animals are beef and chicken.
Well, listen, I'll get them your contact and email information if they want to contribute to the Thank You, Ed Mireles fund. And like you said, Ed, you were very linear in your description of the event. In other words, almost strictly from your point of view, because I've read the book and I know how broad the book is, because you really give a detailed description and recall from all of the different agents' perspective. But so I highly recommend people reading the book. It's really, really informative, and it gets into great detail about the good cop work that went into finding out who these monsters were. But with that said, we have a lot of horsepower in this room, and if anybody would like to ask Ed a personal question, I got his phone number, so I can talk to him whenever I want to. But this is your opportunity. if there's anything here you professionals would like to ask, here's your chance to come up to Mike and ask.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Before we go on, please share my email and phone number with people. If they want to call me or send me a private email, I mean, that's fine too. I mean, sometimes people have a question, but they don't want to be public about it, so, and I can understand that. And guys, ask me anything you want, man. You'll be surprised. I will tell you the unvarnished truth, man.
Yeah, that I know. So if anybody has anything they'd like to ask, they can come on up. And if not, I totally understand. We can do it offline with Ed, later on. But so if not, I just want to thank everybody in here. Does anybody have a question? I don't want to cut anybody off. Okay. I want to make sure that I give a special shout out to Chief Audie Rawl, and kind of my counterpart, I think, from the respective agencies. And Audie was very enthusiastic about setting this up, and it wouldn't be possible without you, Audie. I'm looking at him across the room, and much appreciated, my friend. It means a lot to me. I want to thank everybody here for being in the room today. I want to thank the audience. And like I said, early on, offline, to the people here in this room, the whole purpose of Your Leo Nation, as my audience knows, is really to defend and speak out for the men and women of law enforcement who, by the most part, almost entirely, do the right thing every day. And I'm doing what I can to speak out for you guys and gals and to support you. So if you want to keep the support going, subscribe, share, and promote this podcast as best you can. And it really helps us to get the word out. So with that said, Ed, I can't thank you enough. We'll be in touch, and I'm going to share information with anybody who wants it here. And again, thanks to the Walton County Sheriff's Office and for the work that you do every day. I watch you on Facebook, and my wife, my family, and I appreciate it. Ed, God bless you. God bless America. And guys and gals in law enforcement, keep the faith and stay strong.
God bless you guys. Be safe.